Today I'd like to talk a little bit about West Virginia. West Virginia. Oh, I've played games of the U.S. Civil War where, West Virginia became its own little front with 20, 40,000 man armies on both sides and cavalry rampaging around, and it's, total mess. Well, I don't like that. If I'm the northern player, I don't like that. Southern player, it's not so bad. Northern player, no. I want to take West Virginia on the very first turn. And I'm going to spend quite a bit of resources to make sure that that happens. Now, when the game begins, West Virginia is part of the Confederacy. It's part of Virginia. And the rule basically says that until the northern player takes control of all three objective points, Wheeling, Grafton, and Charleston, West Virginia stays in Confederate hands. Again, the game begins with Wheeling under Union control, which I think is something they changed. I have like the second edition of the rules for this. I don't know if Wheeling was under Union control in the first edition. I'm not sure. Anyways, so how do you take West Virginia away? Well, you've got McClellan up here at Pittsburgh, and he's got 3 strength points, which is about 15,000 men. And he's going to have to do the work for you. Now, when the game begins, most turns have 4 action cycles, but the first 3 turns have 3 action cycles to simulate the kind of ramp up of the war effort. So you've got 3 action cycles to get this done. Well, at the beginning of the turn, you roll 2 dice, and what you come up with, the difference is how many action points you get. So here, each side would get 2 action points. With Confederate initiative, they get to go first. So we'll just hold on to that. Well, the Union player has 2 action points. Well, the first thing you're going to do, you notice McClellan here has a speed of 4, so he can move 4 hexes. Well, I'm going to move McClellan 1, 2, 3, 4 down here to Grafton. That's obvious. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, Patterson is sitting here at Harper's Ferry with 15,000 men. I'm going to take a strength point away from Patterson. And I'm going to move it by rail across this rail line here and reinforce McClellan. Bring him up to 4 strength points. The rail line runs... These towns right here are in Maryland, not in Virginia. This one is right on the border, though. And basically, how rail movement works, if you control the towns along a rail line, and that rail line leads back to an objective hex, like here at Baltimore, you have control of the rail line. So he can move along that line. The reason I reinforced McClellan to 4, when you go down here to attack the militia, it's going to take you 2 turns to get down there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, first of all, on the second turn, you're going to spend a movement point to take control of Grafton. I played a game of this one time against the buddy, and he forgot to do that. He just marched off. He took Charleston with no problem, but he left Grafton sitting behind him. And, of course, well, you'll see what would happen in that scenario in just a moment. Anyways, you got to spend a movement point to take control of Grafton. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the third and final action phase, 1, 2, and attack Charleston. If you attack militia with 4 strength points, it's an overrun. The militia's wiped out, so he goes away. And you automatically move into the hex. Well, at the end of the turn, any enemy towns that you are sitting on with troops automatically come over to your side. So we would put another control marker here at Charleston. And like I said, once you control all 3, you control West Virginia. You also control all the little towns in West Virginia. You see these towns here that are white and blue. So they all go over to Union control. So, wonderful. West Virginia is in Union control. And first of all, you get 2 victory points. Well, 3. You already control Wheeling, though. You get 3 victory points. And you take build points away from the Confederacy. So that's obviously a benefit. But the real reason that I prioritize West Virginia is because of this scenario. So let's say, hypothetically, McClellan goes down to Grafton, takes control of Grafton, and then goes 2 across the mountain, 3, 4. He goes like this. And he's going to threaten south of the Shenandoah. And he just leaves Charleston alone. That's not wise. On the Confederate reinforcement phase at the beginning of the next turn, the rules say you can place up to 2 strength points in each state. And remember I said West Virginia is considered part of Virginia. So the first thing I'm going to do, 2 strength points are going at Charleston. And then I can use strategic movement to move an additional one in there by road. You notice right here there aren't any roads, but there were roads there, obviously. So instead of drawing them all on the map, they just have this rule that you can move up to 1 strength point by road. They have to be over... let me talk about supply for a second. Notice McClellan is 4 movement points. 1, 2, 3, 4 across the mountain to Grafton. You got to be within 4 movement points of an objective hex that a town that you control, or say a strength point, objective hex. You got to be within 4 movement points to be in limited supply. And when you're in limited supply, there are negatives to that, but bottom line is you want to be at least in limited supply. If you're out of supply, you got to roll for attrition, and you might lose more strength points, and so forth and so on. So to do road movement, it has to be over hexes that are within 4 movement points of each other that you control, which obviously is easy for the south because I can start here at Stanton and then go over there. Well, I'm going to move a third one. It took a long time to get to that, but I'm going to move a 3rd strength point into Charleston. And then in the leaders phase, 2 of the generals that the South gets are Longstreet and Jeb Stuart. And I'm going to put both of them over at Charleston. So I've got 2 generals and 3 strength points. Well, this is a problem. First of all, I can get behind McClellan pretty easily because Jeb Stuart's got a movement of 7. So I can get behind McClellan pretty easily and cut him out of supply if I want. Another thing I can do is I could run up here to Wheeling and take back control of Wheeling with Jeb Stuart. I could cross the river and try to take control of one of these objectives I'll move you over just a little bit. There's a bunch of objectives right across the river in Ohio right here. So there's a lot of reasons to cross the river. That's what I'm trying to say. And also, I'm going to have Longstreet sitting here with his own 2 strength points. Probably I'm going to dig in. I'm going to build my own entrenchments and wait for the next reinforcement phase and put 2 more in there and keep building an army there. And so first of all, McClellan is going to probably have to get out. He's going to pull back. But more than that, the northern player is going to have to spend a bunch of resources to stop Jeb Stuart from running all over the place, to get Longstreet out of Charleston and take control of West Virginia. Strength points and action points. You're going to have to spend quite a bit. This can all be solved. None of this happens if, on the first turn, you use your resources wisely to go down here and take control of Charleston. Now, remember, we had 2 action points. Well, we want 2, 3, 4, or 5 action points to start the game. I wish you got 5 action points every turn, but you don't. Well, here's the thing. If you get 1 action point, the difference is 1. That means you get 1 action in each theater. Well, now we have a problem. Because McClellan can march down to Grafton all right, but I don't have an extra action to rail that guy over to build him up to 4 strength points. So now when I go down to Charleston, I'm going to have to fight a battle with the militia down there. Now, if I'm the southern player, when I see that, first thing I'm doing, I'm building an entrenchment at Charleston. That entrenchment gives you a +2 on your die roll. So I'm going to pump him up a little bit. And when McClellan gets down here, like I said, we're going to have a fight. And don't get me wrong, McClellan should win it probably 75% of the time. I don't know the exact math, but, you know, he's going to win it most of the time. But you'd be surprised at how often he gets held off there. And that whole scenario develops that I just described. Now, if I have a special action card for the East or an any card, which is a wild card, I can use that for an additional action in the theater. And if I have that card and I have a difference of 1, I'm going to use that card to send a strength point by rail over here to Grafton. And it's kind of a waste of a card, but I feel like it's so important to take West Virginia that I'm willing to spend the card. I want West Virginia. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I get it. Now let's talk about something else. So in this scenario, we only have the 1 action. And let's say we don't have a special action card that allows us to have a second action. And now McClellan has to go down there and fight it out at Charleston. Well, one thing you don't want to do, and look, I understand your first instinct is this. I'm going to leave a strength point behind at Grafton. So make sure the South doesn't just take it away. And I'm going to go down there with 2. Don't do that. If you go down there with just 2 strength points, I don't know the exact math, but then it's probably like a 50-50 that you take Charleston away from the West Virginia militia. No, don't do that. Take all 3 with you. And if they come back with cavalry or something, or if this guy here at Stanton tries to march over there, well, so be it. But do not leave any strength points behind. The other thing I do is this. You got to spend 1 movement point to take control of an enemy objective. And remember, he has a movement of 4. So 1, take control of it. Then 2, 3, 4. And I take control of this town right here. I think it's called Weston. So I take control of Weston. On the 3rd and final action phase, I march down here to Charleston and I attack the militia. Hopefully I win. Let's say I lose. Let's say it's a tied battle and nobody dies. Well, first of all, in a tied battle, if you're in limited supply, you get demoralized. And remember, he's in limited supply now. To be in full supply, you have to be on a rail line or a navigable river that reaches back to a friendly, for the north, a friendly objective hex. And just so you understand, this river here is not a navigable river. You see the difference in the rivers there. So he's in limited supply. So he's going to get demoralized. Now let's say I had not taken control of Weston and I just marched down there. Well, he will be out of supply now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I forgot. Remember, it's 4 movement points to be in supply. It costs 2 movement points to move through an enemy town. So in other words, he's well out of supply. Well, now I got to mark him out of supply, and I got to roll attrition for him. That demoralized marker adds a +2 to the attrition roll. Being in woods adds a +1 to the attrition roll. And he does you get to minus his attack rating. So -1 for his 1 attack rating. So it would be a +2 to the die roll. And basically how the attrition chart works is the more strength points you have, the more likely it is that you'll lose them. When you have 3 strength points, basically if you roll a 4, 5, or a 6, you're going to lose with 1 die, of course. You're going to lose a strength point. So here, we take that +2 is 7, he loses a strength point. In other words, you're going to lose a strength point if you're out of supply and demoralized. I guess if you roll a 1, you won't lose a strength point. Not good. Because on the next turn, the reinforcement phase, just as we discussed, all kinds of troops are going to pour into Charleston, and we're going to put generals there. And now, oh my goodness, I'm out of supply, and I have to keep rolling attrition. I'm outnumbered. Well, that's all averted by taking control of Weston. You stay in supply. Now, let's say that happens and you don't take Charleston, which again, if you only get 1 action point and if you, say, roll poorly, it's going to happen, I don't know, a third of the time. Well, you got to take West Virginia. You can't just ignore it, because every turn the Southern player is going to keep pumping reinforcements in there. Jeb Stuart's going to cross the river and try to take these towns from you. They're going to try and take back these other resource hexes here. And so on your next on your reinforcement phase, you can't place troops directly into West Virginia. They have to go on in northern states on northern objectives. So you're going to have to use some strategic movement. I would move 2 by rail over here to Grafton. Probably start 3 here and then move them by rail. I don't know what that town is. Well, it's a ferry across the town. 3 there, so that I can reinforce McClellan, so that I can deliver a knockout punch and take Charleston. Which even then, it's dicey because it's going to be three strength points there with a +2 for the entrenchment and a +1 for I don't know where Longstreet. Oh, here's Longstreet. See, Longstreet has a +1 on defense. And so it's going to be a +1 on defense, plus a +2 for the entrenchment. It's going to be close. It's going to be a 50-50 whether I actually take it away. And it's going to become a whole thing. You're going to keep pouring troops in there. The South is going to keep pouring troops in there. You're going to be spending action points. You're probably going to be chasing Jeb Stuart around Ohio. It's a whole problem. And this is all averted, every bit of it, by simply, if possible, giving McClellan that fourth strength point and having him march down there and take control of West Virginia. Now you might be thinking this too. So I'm the Southern player, and you don't take West Virginia from me. Well, man, I don't want to put 3 strength points in West Virginia. I want to put those strength points in Northern Virginia, to try and hold off the Army of the Potomac, try to hold the Shenandoah Valley. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. And so what you need to do is, if you're going to put troops into West Virginia, you need to pull troops out of the West and send them to Northern Virginia to reinforce there. So you're going to deplete the West, but I think that the value of contesting West Virginia outweighs the fact that you'll be a few strength points behind where you should be in the West. I've played this game quite a few times solitaire, and I've played it quite a few times face-to-face. In fact, my little gaming group played it probably once or twice a week for about a year, so we played it a lot. And you'd be surprised, the number of games in which the Union player did not take West Virginia. I don't know that they won any of them. I mean, it became a huge thing every single time. In fact, it got to a point where if you didn't take it, let's reset the game. The Northern player concedes. Let's reset the game and start over again, because we just don't want to deal with the whole headache of it. And so it's important. It's very important. And again, you have goals or objectives, other places on the map. For one thing, I would love to move Beauregard off Manassas Junction. That's a nice thing to do. In the Trans-Mississippi, the South starts in control of Springfield, Missouri, so that would be nice to get back. Thing is, none of that is as important as West Virginia, not to begin the game. So spend your action points to get down there. Build McClellan up to 4 strength points if possible, and knock it out. Deliver the knockout punch. And then the Northern player can move on to the other areas of importance and really focus on them. See, another thing is this. Once the North takes West Virginia, not really very often does it ever go back to the South. It's hard for the South to move troops from here over into West Virginia, especially since you're going to be taking so much pressure up here in Northern Virginia. So forces that might go this way, they're going this way, almost certainly. And so once you take it, you probably got it for the game. And I'm not sure I've ever played a game where the South got it back after losing it. Maybe a cavalry raid where they maybe took back like Grafton or something, but not the whole thing. Taking the whole thing back is going to be really difficult for the South to do. So anyways, focus on West Virginia. And if you have any questions, comments, anything, please leave them below. I think the reason I'm doing these videos is that's my West Virginia strategy. Maybe there's something I'm missing. If you've played this and you have a different perspective on it, please leave a comment and let me know. I'm actually genuinely curious what other people think about this. And I'm going to do some more videos about other places on the map, other scenarios, and what I think either side should probably do. And I don't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, so I'm going to mention it right now. If you want to watch a really good video that gives an overview of this game, Gilbert Collins did one a few years ago, and I'm going to have a link in the description to his video. I suggest you go watch it. If you're not familiar with this game, he does a great job and explains a lot about it. If you have any questions about the rules, please leave questions. If I have any problems with the rules, if I've missed something, please remind me. Leave me a note. Anyways, have a good evening, and we'll move with another video in a few days probably. Thank you.